friends, and welcome to episode 98 of Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. Did You Bring the Hummus is a podcast for all things vegan. Episodes post every Monday on your favorite podcast app. Before we get started, I have one very important question for you. Did you bring the hummus? Do you love the podcast? Want to help me keep it going? Visit the Support the Podcast tab on my website to learn more. I've started offering meditation sessions over Zoom again. As of the publishing of this episode, they take place on alternating Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sign-up options include individual sessions, a monthly subscription, or a 10-session package good for 6 months. Today, I am joined by the one and only Dr. Alan Goldhamer. Dr. Goldhamer is the founder of TrueNorth Health Center, a state-of-the-art facility that provides medical and chiropractic services, psychotherapy and counseling, as well as massage and bodywork. He is also director of the center's groundbreaking residential health education program. Articulate, inspiring, and energetic, Dr. Goldhamer is one of the most pioneering and dedicated visionaries in health today. An outspoken professional who doesn't shy away from a spirited debate, he is deeply committed to helping people stuck in their self-destructive cycles reclaim their ability to change their lives. Dr. Goldhamer has supervised the fasts of thousands of patients. Under his guidance, the center has become one of the premier training facilities for doctors wishing to gain certification in the supervision of therapeutic fasting. I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Goldhamer at Farm Days at Ethos Health in September, and I was delighted when he agreed to join me here on this podcast. I really enjoy him and his approach. He's honest and forthright, and I find him incredibly inspiring. Hey, Dr. Goldhamer, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.
I am super excited about this conversation. I was lucky enough to be a vendor at the recent Farm Days at Ethos Farm in Long Valley, New Jersey, and I got to hear you speak and also spend a minute to talk to you and ask you to be on the podcast. And now here you are, and I'm really honored to be here with you today.
Nice to see you again.
Thanks. So as we do always at Did You Bring the Hummus, the very first question I have for you is to share your vegan journey. Tell me how it all began.
Well, actually, for me, I was in fourth grade and was interested in being a better basketball player.
Hmm.
And I had a friend, Doug Lyle, who ultimately became the co-author with me of our book, The Pleasure Trap. And he used to beat me badly. And I thought if I got healthier, I might be able to beat him. And I read a book by Herbert Shelton, which was called Can Fasting Save Your Life? It was called Fasting Can Save Your Life. And it made this argument. It said that health had causes just like disease has causes. And so if you did the things that cause health, you'd get healthy. And the things that cause health were diet, sleep, and exercise. And he talked about using fasting as a way of making up for things that maybe hadn't been done exactly right. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense. And so I diligently applied a whole plant food diet, exercise, and sleep. And it turned out that it failed because Doug also adopted the same habits and beat me then, beats me now. I'm 65 now, he still beats me. So whatever. But it did get me interested in this whole thing.
Okay.
And then when I was 16, I decided I was actually going to go into this field as a profession. And my uncle was a medical doctor. And I remember at my 16th birthday, he came and my mother was concerned because I'd adopted a vegan diet. And he reassured my mom that as long as I ate plenty of gefilte fish, I'd be fine. And I explained to my uncle, I said, no, it's called being a vegan. We don't use any animal foods. He says, it's called being a mashugana. He said, you'll stop it and you'll go back onto a normal diet. I told him at that same birthday that I had decided to pursue lifestyle medicine as a career. And he said, no, you are not going to do that. He said, nobody in this family goes to a doctor like that, let alone becomes a doctor like that. He said, better you should be a communist spy. And I thought he was going to have a stroke right then, the vessels in his neck. And so he leaves, and my dad, who was a very serious guy, took me aside. He said, son, I don't know anything about this alternative medicine, but anything that makes him that angry and mad, it can't be bad. So stick to your guns and good luck to you.
Yeah.
And so for the last, whatever it is, 49 years, we've been using this diet and lifestyle approach and fasting to try to help people that are sick get well and help healthy people learn to stay that way.
That's awesome and very impressive that in 4th grade, you were like, how can I be healthier? And then,
There's something to be said for being on the spectrum.
ah, um, so now you've spent all of this time, 40 plus years, looking at how fasting can help people get healthier or stay healthy if they're already there. And one of the things I'm going to try not to bounce all over the place because I have a lot of fun things to ask you about. But there was a slide that you shared during farm days that really struck me. And it was about failure rates. How someone can be an alcoholic and they have a strong support system and it helps them get the help that they need and they work through it. And I'm going to cheat and I'm going to look at it right now. And 18% of recovering alcoholics can abstain for 1 year and an 82% failure rate. And then you've got 10% of heroin addicts are able to abstain for 1 year and they have a 90% failure rate. And then we get to 5% of people can sustain 5% of their body weight loss for 1 year at a 95% failure rate.
Right. And if your BMI is over 40, there's a 99% failure rate.
That, that I, oh, it really, it hit me when you said that. And I just kind of stood there trying to process that and thinking about my own life. So we'll get a little anecdotal here, right? Thinking about my own life where I have felt like food is both comfort and the enemy. And then my body has become the enemy as well. And I
Right.
look over the course of, when I was little, under the age of 8, I was a normal sized, using air quotes, normal sized human
Right.
being. And then I just started gaining weight and I started turning to food as I started to experience things in life that made me uncomfortable or sad or whatever it was. And that has persisted. And I have had those times in my life where I had that support, where it felt like everybody was like, yeah, go Kimberly, you can get healthy, you can do it. And I would do it for a little while. And yeah,
Yeah.
failure.
So
Failure.
that's the rule, not the exception. The difference is, though, some people are more effective and more efficient.
Mm,
And some people in our society have trouble with weight loss, they're called women. See, women are energy conserving fat storage devices, biologically speaking. They're full of estrogen, which they need in order to survive a period of vulnerability called pregnancy. So if you take really efficient women that have good digestive systems, absorb what they eat, put them in a natural setting of scarcity, they'll survive.
mm,
Put them in the modern world of hyper-processed foods, they're screwed because those very good, strong, biological, beneficial things work against you with ultra-processed foods.
mm.
It's like it's only a question of how big are you going to get, depending on how much of it are you going to eat. So gaining fat easily is not a bad thing. That's a good thing biologically. Those were the characteristics that allowed your parents, your grandparents, your great-grand back for 1,000 generations to survive.
Mm,
But they never lived in this environment of abundance. They
yeah.
lived in an environment of scarcity where it was so difficult to get enough to eat that only the most efficient could survive. And
Mm,
now we've got these genes since the post-industrial revolution 200 years ago, where we've shifted 70% of calories are ultra-processed food. And now those people gain extra fat easily. And then you
mm,
compound it with inordinate amounts of stress, and we learn to use food for emotional things. And we're eating for a lot of reasons
yeah.
besides, biological survival. And then you also reduce activity levels because, we cars and things and all this, and increase stress levels. So you think about the amount of stress people are under today versus what they might have been, the occasional stress in a different setting. So you put all that together, and it's not surprising that 72% of people are overweight or obese. So the people that are not overweight or obese are very abnormal.
Mm,
It's overweight people, normal. That's what everybody is.
yeah.
And who are the people that are not? Oh, they're disciplined. No, no, no. They're people that have poor absorptive capacities. They're drug addicts, or they happen to be very fortunate that they discovered some of these vegan, SOS free, whatever. But
Mm.
it's still a very, very small percentage of people that are not dealing with these issues. So some people, it becomes more obvious though, because they have better absorptive capacities, they have better digestive systems. They've got, some people have long systems, some people have short systems. There's all these that people have no control over. The bottom line, what does it mean? If you're a female full of estrogen, you have healthy genes with good digestive system, what does that mean? It means you have to work twice as hard, you're going to get half the results.
Awesome.
You know, get used to it. I don't make up the rules. There's nothing you can do to make it easier. It's just that's how it is. And it also would be good to eliminate sources of stress.
Mm.
I think stress, you have to think of it like Christmas. It's better to give than receive. So I encourage patients to be generous.
With our stress, giving it out to
Yeah,
other people.
give it to other people.
You
Just,
take this, you take that. Thank you very much.
I think a lot of it is you also have, we talk about in the pleasure trap, some people have a harder time psychologically because they're loving, caring people.
Mm,
And I realized, Dr. Lyle explained to me, they can't help it. It's their genes, it's their programming. And so if you happen to be one of those loving, kind, considerate people that's worried about other people's well-being and feelings, this is a lot harder. Because
mm.
even if you're successful, you just piss everybody off. And they're what are called energy vampires. They're people that do what they do best, and that's make other people as sick and miserable as possible so they don't have to feel so bad by comparison. So they're the ones always trying to undermine people's success. And it makes it even harder for those people struggling to try to do the right thing.
So we've got to watch what we're eating, and we've got to watch who we're spending our time with, and we have to watch our stress levels and how the world around us
Right. And
impacts
if you're
that.
one of those people that is a kind of a caring, considerate person, stress has a bigger impact on you than if you were somebody who doesn't really give a crap what other people think. So you
Yeah.
can see, I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but the people that are less concerned about other people's feelings have less problems with their own internalization. I mean, I have patients when they lose weight and they go back to work, and the other women are actually angry with them and
Mm,
start treating them badly. They feel bad for them.
yeah.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
They feel bad that they've lost weight and now they're offending them on some level,
Hmm.
and they're having to take a bunch of crap because they've upset people.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
That's an interesting dynamic that um I've noticed too in my own life with my weight going up and down as much as it has in my early 20s. There was definitely a group of ladies that I spent time with. I was the big girl of the group, and I got my weight down, started enjoying wearing different clothing, things like that. And like the words that eventually came out, "Oh, you look like a whore, you're a slut." Like it was like, "Whoa, I thought we were friends." And
you
that,
know,
that
one of the analogies I use, if I've had many patients, they lose maybe 50 pounds, they go back to work. The other women are not like, oh, did you adopt a whole plant food diet? We're so proud of you. What can we do to help? It's, oh, here she comes, that bitch. You
uh-huh.
know, Men lose 50 pounds and go back to work. They don't have the same problem because the other men don't notice. And if
Mm,
they do notice, they don't care.
yeah.
And so there's big differences between male and female dynamics on these things. It's much harder for women because even when they're successful, they have to put up with a bunch of crap.
Yeah. Mm, okay. So now next tip, surround myself with men. So they won't notice or they don't care. One of the things that I love the way you deliver all of this. I've watched interviews with you before, and even the talk at Ethos. The way that you talk about how we should eat, where our bodies really can function and be healthy, and we're living that optimal life from that perspective. You talk about, and you quickly touched on it, just or you mentioned it, the no salt, oil, sugar. You call them chemicals, and I've never heard anyone call them that.
Yeah. Well, when you think about salt, oil, and sugar, These are um, they are chemicals that are extracted from food and then
Mm,
put back in to make food taste better. And what tasting better means is that the composition of what you put in your mouth stimulates more dopamine in your brain. Dopamine is the neurochemical associated with pleasure. And so your brain is designed as a calorie detection device. So the higher the caloric density, the more dopamine. Because in a world of our environment, our ancestors, you were in an environment of scarcity. If you could tell the difference between salad and more concentrated food, you had a selective advantage.
mm,
We're wired to crave the most concentrated food that's available and eat as much as we can. And if you do that, you might be the lucky few that live to reproduce. Remember, most humans born on the planet never lived long enough to pass on their genes. They died from starvation, from predation. Only people that survived were the ones that were really good at getting enough to eat in this environment of scarcity. The brain is the same as it was 100,000 years ago, according to anthropologists, but we live in a completely different environment the last 200 years.
yeah.
So now we have to figure out, okay, how do we adapt to this new environment of abundance? The only people that used to get the common diseases were called kings. They
Mm.
were called the diseases of kings, the gout, the heart disease, the cancer. Now we all are being exposed to hyper-concentrated, ultra-processed foods. So you have to figure out, how can I navigate around that? One way is to eat so much of the low density, low caloric density, high nutrient density foods, there's not as much room left for the others.
Mm.
So big salads, big steamed vegetables, potatoes, rice, and beans, and mostly getting rid of the chemicals that fool the satiety mechanisms. Those are salt, oil, and sugar. So sodium is an essential nutrient. You have to have enough sodium or you die. But you get all the sodium you need from a whole variety of whole plant foods. You don't have to add salt to get enough salt. You don't need to add sugar to foods to get enough carbohydrates. You don't need to add oil. And the absorption rate of oil, for example, versus high fat foods is 50 to 1.
Mm.
So in other words, if you're eating a mouthful of avocado, it goes in about a calorie an hour, whatever it is. And the oil, though, the avocado oil is going to go in massively faster.
Yeah.
And so in terms of satiety and feedback, it's a lot easier to get fat eating oil than it is to eat even rich foods. Now, even the rich foods you can overdo. So, I'm
Mm.
not saying unrestricted anything, but the idea being the more whole food we get and the less processed, the easier it is to avoid overeating. So carrots versus carrot juice doesn't mean carrot juice is bad, but the ability to not overeat is dependent on getting enough fiber, getting enough of these high volume, low cellulose foods, or high cellulose, low fat foods into the diet to get the stress receptors activated to provide the satiety feedback. And that's why we talk about a vegan SOS-free diet. So a diet without the salt, the oil, and the sugar. If you do that, it makes it exceedingly easier to not maintain obesity. So
Mm.
we don't have patients, say, adopting this diet that aren't able to lose weight in a predictable way. And if they're a male, it's about 3 pounds a week. If it's a female, it's only going to be 2 pounds a week. Because women will lose about 50% less weight, everything else being equal, just because of the way their physiology is.
Oh, that's frustrating.
So if you're a
I
woman, like I said, you work twice as hard, you're going to get half the results. Be prepared, because it's tough business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to know, because then you can set that expectation. As frustrating as it is, you can still know, okay, it's actually things are working the way they're supposed to. This is
Right.
okay. I'm not failing at this again.
But a lot of times a husband and wife will go on a diet together, and the wife does everything perfectly, 3 ounces, right? And the
Mhm.
husband was going to In-N-Out Burger and cheating, and yet it just melts off, and the
Yep.
wife gets frustrated.
Yeah, and then it's like, "All right, I'm just gonna go out with you too and get the burger, and we'll just give up."
Exactly. But I
Yeah.
think what we have to do is change our view of, people feel bad if they gain weight and have trouble with losing weight. I think they have to take a different angle on it and realize, oh, I'm a biologically superior human being. And as a consequence, I'm more vulnerable to this drug-like effect of foods that have been foisted upon us by
Mm.
an industry. And so if you look at it that way, you can feel less bad that, oh, I'm damaged goods, or mommy didn't love me enough, or daddy loved me too much, or I'm weak, or no,
Yeah.
you're just more efficient and also vulnerable to the pleasure trap.
Let's talk about that a little bit. But first, I actually have a question that talking about not eating salt, not adding salt. I've had people ask, but where do you get iodine from? Don't you need
Yes,
table salt for iodine? So
right.
where would we find
Well,
that?
what happened was it used to be because iodine is one of the few minerals that plants don't have to have in order to reproduce. Um, if you lived in Minnesota, for example, and all your food came from Minnesota, there's no iodine in the soil in Minnesota.
Hmm.
So you would develop iodine deficiency, and people did, and they had goiters. And so they thought, well, how can we make sure people will eat the iodine? We'll put it in the salt because God knows they're going to eat that. So
Yep.
fortunately, there's other sources of iodine, like vegetables, if they're grown on the coast where
Mm.
the iodine, or you can add sea vegetables to the diet, like some nori sheets or some kelp, which is very high in iodine. Or if you had to, you could supplement iodine, a daily supplement of iodine. You don't need to poison yourself with added salt in order to get enough iodine. And if you're trying to lose weight, salt is a real problem. And you might say, well, why would that be? There's no calories in salt. It's just sodium chloride, but it stimulates what's called passive overeating. Like if you take rats or people and give them, say, rice, they'll eat a certain amount. After a while, they reach their natural satiety mechanism. They feel full and they stop. You salt the rice, everything else being equal, they'll eat significantly more before they feel satisfied. And
Hmm.
people say, yeah, because the salt makes the rice taste better. And that's what tasting better means. It means it stimulates more dopamine production. And before you reach natural satiety, you'll have eaten significantly more. That's why salt helps people fat, even though there's no calories in it. Think about it. If we take bread, which has 1,500 calories a pound, right?
Mhm.
And then you put butter on it, like coagulated cow pus, you increase the density even more. And people eat that and they gain weight, and it's a big problem. Cookies, crackers, all that stuff. Let's take bread, but remove the salt, the oil, the sugar, the yeast. What do you have? It's called matzah. It's
Mm.
punishment on Passover. Nobody's getting fat eating matzah. That's not the problem. Okay. So the point is, we're using the wheat as a carrier agent for the salt, the oil, the sugar.
Mm.
Think about beef. Take some beef and boil it, and just gnaw on boiled beef. You think that's going to be really entertaining?
Mm-mm.
No. It's a carrier agent for the sauces, the salt, we're using a few highly processed grains as carrier agents for salt, oil, and sugar. That's why when you go to the fair and they want to make the food even more appealing, they take the Snickers bar and they'll deep fry it,
Right. Oh my
increase
God.
the caloric density. Now it's really special. Okay.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of, if you're aware of the pleasure trap, you realize that everybody around you is just trying to make money, giving you what you want, not necessarily what you need.
Mm.
And then when you suffer the consequence of it, they blame you.
That's true. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Right. Is even the like fast food companies, they have come out in past years and just said, we didn't say you should eat, this meal every day or this is part of a balanced diet.
Sure it
If you
is.
don't eat it every day,
Yeah.
you'll be fine.
And the guys selling cocaine tell the guys who are heroin, yeah, we didn't say you're supposed to use it every day. It's just part of a balanced. Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. So the pleasure
When you
trap.
really get the concept of the pleasure trap, you realize though it's exactly what you'd predict would happen.
Mm,
And so it's not really a big mystery. It's actually very predictable. The only mystery is that how is it that only 72% of people are overweight and obese? How come it's not 99%?
yeah.
Yeah, well, what we do know is that some people have naturally very sensitive satiety mechanisms. So even eating processed foods, they will still feel full quicker than other people will. So they'll tend to, some people are dying from cancer and they have cachexia disease, so they can eat whatever they want, but they're still going to be. Some people are heroin addicts. If you look at those fashion magazine covers, a lot of those people are heroin addicts. And, so they're, or even alcoholics that'll drink but not eat. And so, you'll see deficiency syndromes. So there's a lot of reasons. And some people are hyper vigilant, highly conscientious. They understand these principles. And so they eat large amounts of fruits and vegetables and lower amounts of the more concentrated foods. They exercise vigorously, have maybe higher metabolic rates to begin with. And so, they're able to maintain health. Now, I can tell you a lot of our staff and employees are lean and mean and healthy and happy because they really understand this. And that's why we write the books. That's why we wrote The Pleasure Trap and Can Fasting Save Your Life, so people could understand it. That doesn't make it easy, though.
Yeah.
Even like when you completely understand this, there are still a lot of variables in there. Like you mentioned earlier, some people are eating not because they're hungry, but because they're angry, frustrated, tired, fatigued, and they haven't really put it all together that they're using food as a drug-like effect. But you
Yeah.
notice it's not carrots and celery that they're using as drug-like effect. It's always hyper-processed, ultra-processed foods.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us vegans, back in the 90s even and early 2000s when I first went vegetarian, there weren't all of these different vegan products on the market. And so you kind of almost you could go to like a holiday with your family and you would really only have vegetables to eat. So even holidays felt like, hey, I don't even eat
Right.
junk food anymore. There's nothing here for me.
Yeah.
And now it's
Although
everywhere.
Coca-Cola is vegan, French
That's
fries
true.
are vegan, and
That's
now
true.
there's so much hype. In fact, I got myself in big trouble at one of the national vegan conferences because I pointed out. Now, remember, most vegans are vegans not for health reasons. They're
Mhm.
vegans to save the animals, to save the planet, moral, ethical, spiritual, all that stuff, not their own personal health necessarily.
Mhm.
So I met this vegan conference and I pointed out that as bad as meat was for health, and it was, there's plenty of problems with animal products. Some of this processed, hyper-processed vegan food might even be worse. I said,
Mhm.
some of them might be better off eating meat than some of this stuff. And oh my gosh, you would have thought that was the worst thing you could possibly say. And so, but that's why we advocate a vegan SOS-free diet. The reason we coined that term SOS-free was because just because it was vegan didn't mean it was healthy.
Yeah. Yep.
And, a lot of times it was unfortunate because people thought, well, it's vegan, it must be okay.
Mhm. And I think
And
for
it's
a while,
only,
like, it was, right? But
yeah, well,
now
and maybe in the old days it was,
yeah.
yeah. But what we want is we want a whole plant food diet that's free of added salt, oil, and sugar as much as possible.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, not all the packaged, heated, beaten, chopped, diced, processed crap. I
Yeah,
got
and
myself into trouble. I said that, I was talking about Whole Foods. And I
mhm.
said that 95% of the material in Whole Foods was not whole foods. It's meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, oil, alcohol, and chocolate. And I said that, 95% of the profit had nothing to do with Whole Foods. And the owner of Whole Foods happened to be at our facility at the time. And they said that was not true, that it was more like 99%.
Jeez.
And that we should be grateful to all the people buying all that hyper ultra processed foods, because if it wasn't for them, there would be no Whole Foods.
Mm.
So now when I go to Whole Foods and I see people filling their carts full of processed, ultra processed foods, I have a different attitude. I actually go over to them and thank them for their support now.
Yeah. They're buying that stuff, so you have the vast
There's
array
still a
of
few bits of
vegetables.
bins of grains and fruits and vegetables. So yeah, thank
Yep.
goodness. Thank you very much for your support.
Yeah. I'm a vegan from the animals side, the ethics and all of that. I
Right.
didn't care. I used to say, any health benefits from being vegan, like those are a perk. My whole reason for doing
Right.
this is for the animals. And that is still my why. And it's the reason why I would never eat animal products, even if you said, like, hey, it's actually better for your health than these vegan processed things. Um, but now as I'm in my 40s and things are cropping up and I'm starting to go, okay, but like I'm an animal too. So maybe I need to start having some compassion for myself and think about it from the health perspective. And so I think that we can still be vegan and doing it for the animals while also taking really good care of ourselves.
Yeah. I think that a lot of vegans are very compassionate people and they feel, for the animals. And I think that's why they have so much trouble with the pleasure trap, because they are
Mm,
those kind, loving, caring kind of people. And so therefore it's more difficult, not less difficult for them to adopt the health promoting, habits and lifestyles. But at least as a vegan, you're not eating meat, fish, fowl, eggs, and dairy products. So we can put all that aside. Now we just have to get rid of the SOS, the
yeah.
salt, oil, and sugar, and replace it with lots of fruit, salad, steamed vegetables, potatoes, rice, beans, small amounts of nuts and seeds. And basically, I just tell people, think about all the things that give you joy and comfort and get rid of them. As you can tell, I'm not one of those loving, caring, kind, gentle people. So this stuff for me is relatively easy.
Mhm. I don't know. I think you've got a little bit of caring and kindness in there too. No. Well,
No,
potatoes can
my
be
wife
very healthy.
says I've spent 40 years running TrueNorth Health Center, fasting people and using diet and lifestyle. And she says all of it's about trying to prove I'm right and everybody else is wrong.
Hey, but it's what 25,000 people have gone through and you've helped them, so I think it's okay. Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me about True North. What made you create this place for people to go and go through this
Well,
process
my
that you
wife
went
says I created it so I'd have a healthy place to eat lunch, and True North Health Center is the True North Health Foundation, which is the power behind everything, is a 501c3 nonprofit research foundation. True North Health Clinic is essentially a human subjects laboratory that's disguised as a clinic. So what we're about is trying to figure out how to use fasting more effectively and publish in peer-reviewed journals the results of our research. And we have a book, Can Fasting Save Your Life, which kind of brings all of our original research together. It's kind of unique in that regard because most of the book is built upon the results of our own original research.
Mm.
And so at True North Health Center, we treat high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and we also treat people with things like lymphoma, but also we treat healthy people that are trying to stay that way. And it turns out that as helpful as fasting is in sick people, the people that may actually get the most net benefit are healthy people using it preventatively to stay that way.
Mm.
And so we have people, I've seen some people, for a week or two every year for the last 40 years. And what's weird is, now they're in their 80s because they started off in their 40s or 50s. And, they say the same story over and over again. Everybody they know is dead.
Mm.
And sometimes even their kids are dead because,
Mm.
they're in their 80s, their kids died from heart attacks in their 60s who didn't adopt the diet. And I met my mom when she was 92. She'd outlived all 50 of her lifelong friends. And she said, Alan, it was harder to make friends because even people 10 years younger than her were still too old to do the things she liked to do. And so she said, Alan, you have to warn your patients if they're going to do this type of diet, make younger friends. And she said, not just a little younger, a lot younger, or pick a few that are, health conscious so there'll be people left.
I think that's a pretty good what's the like testimonial for what you're doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lonely, but solid.
Yeah. So we might be able to get you healthy, but we'll definitely make you a social outcast. So, you have to be prepared for the fact that you really will piss off a lot of people. You ask any alcoholic that's recovered, and they'll tell you some of their friends weren't their friends anymore
Mhm.
because, they weren't comfortable with them anymore. You lose weight, and I guarantee you'll have people that start acting out and become
Yeah.
upset and be concerned. So you just have to be prepared for that. And, you don't need people that are all going to do exactly what you do, but they've got to tolerate you being successful.
Mhm.
So you need people, again, they don't have to be vegan, but they have to tolerate you being vegan. They don't have to be healthy, but they have to tolerate you trying to live health consciously and not try to undermine your success.
Mhm.
And so that's really where the drawing line is, not finding everybody that does exactly and believes everything you believe, but people that have enough tolerance to allow you to be successful and healthy and happy.
Hmm. That sounds hard, right? Yeah. People very typically these days are not like that, I think. It's hard. It's hard to find people who are really there supporting you. Because even the people you think are like going to be in your corner, yeah, you're going to find out they're going to be mad too. What do you mean you don't want to go and get vegan ice cream? It's summer, it's hot out. Like, why would we not do that? Or you're not going to eat all of the pies at Thanksgiving. Yeah.
You're no fun anymore. Where are you going to get your protein from?
Oh,
It's not good to be a fanatic.
yeah. Aren't you being a little too strict about this?
Don't you think you've carried this a little too far?
Yeah.
Well, radical comes from radicus, which means root or cause. So it is a very radical approach because it is dealing with the root or cause of the actual problem.
Hmm. I like that. So you've talked about the pleasure trap a couple of times, which is a book that you wrote with Doug Lyle. And I how's your art? Are you as artistic as Doug?
No,
I've seen
not at
his
all. I
videos.
have almost no artistic capacity whatsoever. Fortunately, my wife is very artistic, so it offsets and balances us out.
Nice. But what exactly is the pleasure trap? I think throughout this whole conversation, you've definitely touched on pieces of it, but how would you define that to someone who's never heard it
Sure.
before?
The pleasure trap is the hidden force that undermines health and happiness. It basically involves the artificial stimulation of dopamine in the brain, the neurochemical associated with pleasure. So drug addiction is an example of a pleasure trap where you start taking drugs because it makes you feel good, but you have to keep doing it to avoid feeling bad. Kind of the hallmark of addiction is withdrawal. And the same thing happens with salt, oil, and sugar. You take it at first because you like it, it makes you feel good, but then you have a great deal of difficulty, trying to not consume it. And so we're getting kind of a drug-like effect. It's the same artificial stimulation of dopamine. It's an example of the pleasure trap. You're trapped by the artificial induction of pleasure, or as it turns out, increased dopamine production in the brain.
Mhm.
And what's weird is heroin addicts, we know how hard it is for people to quit heroin once they're addicted, or alcohol. But statistically, they're more likely to succeed than the person trying to lose weight and keep it off. And that's because with an alcoholic, we tell them the truth. They're not doing well with that particular chemical. They have to not drink at all. We don't say, well, just drink beer and wine and you'll be okay. Put your alcohol in a smaller cup. Drink your alcohol with a spoon. Put the spoon down between each slurp and you won't be a drunk anymore. We tell them the truth. You have to stop drinking because you're not able to regulate that. Can some people have a drink and not be a drunk? Sure. But if you're a drunk, it's not you.
Mhm.
And if you could have controlled it, you would have controlled it. And just telling them, well, drink less ain't going to get the job done. What we tell overweight people is, oh, put your food on a smaller plate. Chop your food into bits and put your fork down and chew your food, and you won't be overweight anymore. And it doesn't work at all. In fact, if you tried to manage alcoholics like we manage overweight patients, they'd also have a 99.99% failure rate. We
Mm.
wouldn't tell the alcoholic to just drink beer and wine because we know that's ridiculous and going to fail. But we do tell overweight people, well, you change the color of your meat from red to white and you won't have a problem anymore. You can have salt, but don't have oil. You can have oil, but don't have sugar. You can have sugar, but you can't have oil. No, you got to stop it, because if you could have controlled it, you would have controlled it. You can't. So let's go on a whole plant food SOS free diet. And what happens is, even for emotionally damaged people that have stress in their lives and all kinds of awful historical, they lose predictably their weight.
Mm.
So it doesn't mean it's not harder for people with emotional scar tissue issues, because your attitude determines your action, but your action determines the outcome. So if you've got attitude compromises because you've been damaged, sure, you have to work harder at it. But if you can figure out how to do the right behavior, you're going to get the right result. And
Mm.
so it's getting to do the behavior that's the challenge. Not saying it's not more difficult, but what good does it do to whine about the fact that we've had some bad luck and bad circumstances, bad genetics, whatever? You can't do anything about that. What can you do is your behavior going forward. So we're all about trying to develop strategies to overcome what is in fact a very unfair and very cruel world.
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah. I've I've heard the small plate, the fork, putting it down, the chew 100 times, and then, till your food is liquid, and then it will help you lose weight.
Right.
You won't absorb the fat, and and now, of
But people
course.
also internalize the judgment that, oh, there's something wrong with them because they gain
Yes.
weight easily, instead of
Mhm.
understanding, no, this is just biological. Like, you can take
Yeah.
another person with no more discipline, no more circumstances, put them on a similar diet, but you're going to see very different outcomes.
Mhm.
Okay. So, yes, some people are more vulnerable to the pleasure trap biologically, psychologically, circumstantially, no question. There's
Mhm.
differences. And yes, some people have to work a lot harder. They're much less likely to succeed. But all the people are failing. And that's why we have a better statistical outcome in treating drug addiction than we do in helping people lose weight and keep it off. Now,
Yeah.
does that mean if we tell them the truth, oh, it's the salt, oil, and sugar we have to do, that everybody's going to succeed? No, no. Some people are still going to struggle because of all these other variables. But we can tell, we just did a study with our colleague from the Mayo Clinic, and we took 7 people that completed fasting and the dietary change on a whole plant food diet. 26 of the 27 hypertensive patients had normal blood pressure without medication at the 6-week follow-up, and they had maintained their weight loss. We followed them at a year. 76% of those people had maintained their weight loss a year later. Now, were they perfect? No. Some
Mhm.
people, varied on the diet, but they did well enough at adopting a whole plant diet that they were able to keep their fat off and their visceral fat off, and the majority had normal blood pressure without drugs.
Hmm.
So yes, it's difficult, but even if you have a highly motivated, self-selected person, it is possible to make these changes. We also have the chances of a male that's a BMI over 40 ever losing their weight is about 1 in 1,270 approximately.
Wow.
So, 1.1%. Yet we have lots of people that have lost 100 pounds and kept it off. And so it's not that we only see the 1/10 of 1% people. The fact is there's a higher percentage that can be successful, but not without the right information, tools, and support. And so, life is difficult and it's not going to get particularly simple, but it doesn't get any simpler by not having the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you understand the facts, you can realize, oh my God, this is a big challenge and it takes a huge amount of effort. And, that's what it takes. And if you think it's going to happen easily, that's just delusional. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what everybody's selling in their pills and potions and powders. Right now, the big thing are using GLP inhibitors. So you take these drugs, which, by the way, you have to take the rest of your life, because the moment you stop them, things are going to blow up. And yes, you're going to get problems with gastric motility issues and heart disease, cancer, whatever it is, the downstream consequences are. But the promise is that you will lose weight, and you will, because they will have a drug-like effect that inhibits satiety mechanisms. So you can keep eating your highly processed, ultra-processed food, but you'll eat less of it. Because if you get nauseous and sick enough, you'll tend not to eat as much as you would otherwise. And so, yes, people can lose weight short-term, but it's not a good long-term health strategy. But the problem is the dangers of being overweight are so high because of the visceral fat is acting like a tumor and producing inflammatory products that the short-term benefit of weight loss offsets the short-term cost of the drugs. The problem is the long-term consequence of the drugs is so devastating, it's probably not a good solution for most people.
Yeah.
But again, people don't care about the long term. They're only worried about the short term. I tell people, if you want to lose 40 pounds overnight, just get a chainsaw and cut your hip off cut your leg off at the hip. It'll be 40 pounds overnight.
There you go. How about visceral fat? How is that? What
Mhm.
is that? And
So
is there a way
about
to tackle it?
Yeah, so 10% of fat on average, more or less, is what's called visceral fat. Visceral fat works differently than regular fat. And so the fat that tends to be found around the belly, around the organs, and it's hypertrophic, it's hyperplastic, it acts like a tumor. So a
Hmm.
person that maybe has 20 pounds of extra fat may have as much as 2 pounds of visceral fat around their belly that's giving off inflammatory products that's associated with heart disease and cancer and diabetes. And what's weird about all that is all these different conditions are treated as if they're independent conditions. And yet you have to go to like different doctors to even be
Yeah.
diagnosed and treated. And yet they all have the association. The more inflammation associated with the excess visceral fat causes all of those conditions. And so if you said to a person, look, you have a 2-pound tumor in your abdomen giving off inflammatory products, they might take it seriously. But we don't even allow to acknowledge that overweight is a part of people's health compromise. That's considered politically incorrect. It's blaming the victim if you
Mhm.
tell a person that they're overweight is a major part of their health risk factors.
Mm.
And since everybody's overweight, it seems kind of pointless. What's the point of rubbing, in people's faces and stuff? But when you understand the negative impact of visceral fat, you realize, well, that's a really important thing to get rid of. And so the way you get rid of it is diet, sleep, and exercise. But there's something that preferentially mobilizes visceral fat, and that's fasting.
Mm.
And so, like a person in our book, the Confessing Save Your Life, we talked about a study we did with a DEXA scanner, where these individuals fasted for an average of about 2 weeks. They lost 8% of their total body weight, but 20% of their total fat, and
Mm.
40% of their visceral fat.
Oh, wow.
Only 6% of lean tissue, and that 6% was recovered by 6 weeks recovery, and then some, so that the percentage of lean mass was actually higher at 6-week follow-up than it was at baseline. And so, yes, you lose weight when you fast and you regain weight after fasting, but the weight you lose during fasting is water, fiber, glycogen, protein, and fat. The weight you gain after fasting is water, protein, fiber, and glycogen, not fat. The fat continues to come off on a whole plant food SOS-free diet. So you can transform your body. You can do it slowly and steadily, which is good. You can do it more rapidly, which is good. or combination of those two approaches.
So people can come to True North Center and they have the possibility of fasting with you for 40 days.
Yeah.
How do you do this at home? Can you do it at home? Probably
Mhm.
not for 40 days,
So
but how do
you
you
can
manage that?
do fasting at home. In fact, we encourage people every day to fast at home or up to 16 hours. So the important thing is don't eat 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed at night. So stop eating 3 to 4 hours to go to bed. That's going to give you somewhere between a 12 and 16-hour period of fasting every day. And that little bit of fasting day after day after day is thought to be very beneficial.
Okay.
And if you delay your breakfast in the morning a little bit till you do some exercise, the amount of energy you burn from fat may be disproportionately higher, which is great if you're trying to lose weight. If you're trying to gain weight or you're feeding a kid or something, you're going to do more of a 12-hour feeding window rather than a 16-hour fasting window. So the idea is you don't have enough hours if you're trying to get a higher caloric density
Hmm.
in necessarily in the 8-hour window. So you might have to extend the window to a 12-hour window, but you still, either way, don't eat 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep at night. You'll sleep better. Your food can burn instead of being stored in as fat. And a lot of that late night eating is frustration, anger, or whatever, boredom. That's not when you want to be putting food in. You want to eat because you're hungry, and you want to sleep when you're tired, and you want to exercise when you're frustrated. So, that it's a better application of your behavior.
Yeah, for sure. Can you fast at home? Just like fully like on water, or are there other
Right.
options that are
Well, there's
safe?
modified fasting that can be done safely at home. We get people on 800 calories of fresh vegetable juices, salads, and fruits. If you're going to fast at home, you have to follow the same protocol that we follow at the center, which is history exam and lab to make sure you're a good candidate for fasting, that you rest during fasting, you're not driving to the store and working, and that you carefully refeed to avoid post-fasting edema or potentially fatal refeeding syndrome. So the protocol is laid out in our book, Can Fasting Save Your Life? So that people would understand if they are going to fast at home, they still need to work in conjunction with a local doctor for lab and monitoring. And we have doctors that will work through telemedicine to promote, to support them and their doctor if that's what they want to do. Obviously, there's advantages to fasting in a controlled setting. People can fastly safe at home if they follow the protocol. But you can also get yourself in pretty good trouble if you're trying to do prolonged fasting and not doing it properly, particularly for people on medications and that have health issues. One thing we do offer, though, your viewers, if they want to know is fasting for them, they can certainly read our book, but they can also go onto our website at TrueNorthHealth.com and complete the registration forms. I'll review their medical history and offer them a no-cost phone conversation so we can talk to them about, is this something that's good for them, and try to point them in the direction of a doctor that might be helpful to them.
Oh, that's really amazing. Yeah, what a great service. Dr. Goldhamer, this conversation has been eye-opening and wonderful and fun. And I cannot thank you enough for being here with me today. I've got one more question for you. How does hummus show up in your life?
Well, it's interesting. Hummus is one of those foods that when you're out and about, sometimes you can find hummus when you can't find other, vegetarian edible foods. And it's a concentrated food that, works well with vegetables. It works well in lots of different formats. It's kind of one of those universal foods. So it's kind of a reliable standby for people that are trying to live in the real world but maybe didn't think ahead enough to prepare their own food in advance.
That's the truth. And if you're eating at a lot of at different restaurants, if they're making kind of a traditional hummus, they're only putting oil on top of it. So you can request that they don't do that, and the hummus then is oil free. I love it. So there's no excuses. We can get out there and live and be happy, and we don't have to poison ourselves with the chemicals, salt, oil, and sugar.
No, another place I find hummus is really helpful, especially when we make it ourselves, as you said, oil-free, is you take your carrot sticks, your celery sticks, your jicama sticks, your cherry tomatoes, and your hummus, and you can take it on a plane because it's not perceived as a liquid. And so
Right?
it's good plain food fodder.
That's true. Do you know TSA actually has a page that's specific to hummus? Good stuff. Dr. Goldhammer, thank you so, so much for being here with me.
It's my pleasure.
Welcome back. I think anytime Dr. Goldhammer speaks, he is changing people's lives. What is your greatest takeaway from this conversation? To connect with Dr. Goldhammer, visit the TrueNorth Health Center website at healthpromoting.com. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're loving it, please give Did You Bring the Hummus a 5-star rating and leave a review. It's an easy way to keep supporting the show. Be sure to share these episodes with your friends. If you're finding something good here, they will too. If you're a vegan or know a vegan who would be a great fit for the podcast, follow the Be a Guest link in the show notes. Fill out the quiz and I'll be in touch. Get on my mailing list and stay up to date on all things Did You Bring the Hummus. Get more info on how you can sign up for a meditation, one of my programs, or to support the podcast via the links in the show notes. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Did You Bring the Hummus, and visit my website, didyouBringTheHummus.com, for more information about me, updates on what I'm working on, new podcast episodes, and all things vegan. Finally, I would love to hear from you. What do you need help with? Is there a topic you want to hear covered on a future episode? DM me on Instagram or send me an email at info@didyouBringTheHummus.com. Thanks for listening.